So I think SpaceX may have just given us our clearest hint yet about where Starship is heading next. While Flight 13 is still being prepared, new documentation hints the mission after it could be something we've all been waiting years to see. With that, we've got loads of Falcon 9 action and some sweet updates on this lunar landing to come, we hope, this year. Ariane Space even shocked us with views like this while sending their largest Ariane 6 payload to date, and a dramatic goodbye from Vandenberg Space Force Base.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
This video is sponsored by Displate. Hey, Marcus House with you here, and as we watch SpaceX prepare for the next epic event with Starship Flight 13, we are also quite excited about the plan that follows. As far as the Starship and Super Heavy for Flight 13 are concerned though, both vehicles are still in their megabays preparing for the next steps as expected. We do have some more interesting new information for the following Flight 14 though. If you watched last week's video, you'll know that Gwen Shotwell hinted at plans to potentially fly the first ever orbital Starship mission with Flight 14. More good news on that, because this intention was backed up this week by a Federal Communication Commission application. Here we see a Starship Orbital Return Demo with a start date at the very end of July and running right through until the end of the year. Of course, we would need to see everything for the Starship upper stage go perfectly during Flight 13 beforehand, but the intention here is a very welcome one. Now, this may not mean attempting to catch Starship out of the air with the tower, of course, as they can still do a controlled splashdown at any of the other selected locations in the ocean, including downrange from the launch site, but each step brings us closer to that eventual catch. I mean, a successful catch of the ship would be the next milestone big enough to dethrone the Super Heavy booster catch as the most impressive achievement so far. I still can't quite get my head around the launch site being able to catch both vehicles at some point in the near future. The work around the currently active Pad 2 seems to be getting close to completion after Flight 12. The section of the wall which fell over thanks to all that hellish exhaust is being finished up now, and there may also be some hope for the Gateway to Mars sign lovers out there. See this? They've put up scaffolding across the entire wall. That seems like a huge effort just for a cleanup job, so we're wondering if they might choose to instead paint the sign onto the wall, which would be a more robust option, but we'll soon find out. The catch arm reinforcements we saw SpaceX beginning to install last week took them almost no time at all to weld on, so they already look to be completed. Thanks to these camera views from NSF, we even got to watch and listen to some unique deluge tests. Yeah, that was the first time since Flight 12 that it had been tested, so very good signs that it all held up almost exactly as planned. Nearby at the original Pad 1 being upgraded, there is activity everywhere you look. If we start at the tank farm, they're well and truly making the most of the space they've gained by removing the old methane tanks. There are yet another set of pedestals here now for another 2 large tanks to be installed. This time they appear to be extending the liquid methane storage. We already noted last week the arrival of these 2 tanks here, which will expand the liquid oxygen and liquid nitrogen capacity, but as you can see here, they are still not yet done with those expansions. These piles that we can see sticking up out of the ground are a good indication that they will continue expanding that storage. All this, of course, should mean that SpaceX will have the ability to launch a Starship mission, recycle comfortably within 24 hours, and potentially launch again in rapid succession. Given they will soon have 2 active launch pads and want to do orbital refill testing, they will want that capability without needing to refill all the propellant tanks in between flights. I can't wait to see that. Now, interestingly, over here they began tearing down the electrical bunker which was used to power the old Pad 1 facilities before they became obsolete. It will likely be rebuilt somewhere else on site, but for now at least, they appear to be running a long stretch of conduit from the retention pond at the end of Pad 2 all the way across to the Pad 1 worker break room. At the base of the tower, you may notice there's only a single excavator in the trench actively removing material, but with this sort of work, they need to take it a little easy. SpaceX would be wanting to make certain that the ground water levels and movement is kept within a specific limit. Remember that as they dig deeper, the stress on these side walls increases, and if not accounted for, it'll begin to bow inwards as water seeps in faster. To counteract this, they set up large steel beams along the wall and installed these steel tiebacks, which are drilled and anchored outward through the wall, either into the tower base or the surrounding foundation. Anyway, you can see the excavator has now dug down low enough to make the tops of those piles visible, which will later be capped and tied in with the large concrete rebar slab. That slab will then make up the base of the launch mount, all ready for the complex framework and water deluge system to be built above. The rebar cage for the foundation of the commodities bunker that sits to the side is already done, and that just needs to be poured. The framework for the bunker itself, which has been under construction here out of the way for a while now, is getting corrugated steel flooring installed. It's going to be neat, I think, watching SpaceX lift the whole thing over onto the foundation. If you look at the top of the tower, you'll notice there is now scaffolding up here so that the crew can begin with the roofing reinforcements. So heading up the road toward the build site, if we first stop in at the Sanchez area, we can see the launch mount construction is slowly picking up pace. Many parts are piling up now, and the fourth and final bottom module should arrive soon. Once they are all here, the four corners can be welded in to join them all together. Now over here we've been watching the parts arrive for the water buckets. These braces, which hold all of these individual sections of pipes together, are now on site, and these will allow SpaceX to begin assembling both halves of the deluge buckets. Also nearby are parts for the top ridge, also known as the apex, which is being built here from scratch. Now I've got to say a huge thanks to the awesome work by RGV Aerial Photography. They've picked up this view with enough detail to see a very peculiar looking pattern of holes at the top deck for the brand new Pad 1. This looks nothing like what we saw on Pad 2. Notice the many different hole densities and patterns here along the inner edge. Now this is somewhat speculative, but it'd be interesting if this is the corner which gets blasted by the plume at liftoff. Remember, we have noticed a bit of a hot spot on this side after Flight 12, so perhaps this new hole density pattern is there to ensure the water spraying out balances that furious exhaust overheating that area. Our eyes are certainly going to be focused on the active Pad 2 in the future to see if they start reproducing such an upgrade there too. So heading further onto the build site, we have a huge milestone this week for the gigantic new Gigabay. It has now reached the 7th and final level. Soon, the roofing is going to cover up these sweet aerial views from above, which will be kind of sad because all this time we've been able to peer in and see those views right down into the aisles. Speaking of though, from the ground level, Sean was able to spot some already pre-assembled roof trusses being prepared for lifting into place. He's been loving watching the weekly progress on this monster building growing week by week, from sheet piles and foundation work to actual steel growing and now cladding installation. Although in future we'll have more limited views, Sean will of course continue to keep getting those best views possible. We couldn't be out here without you being subscribed here watching along, so thanks a heap for all that. With vehicle production continuing to ramp up, there's going to be more focus on everything rolling back and forth during those testing phases before flights. With any luck, we'll be seeing the next flight in just a few weeks' time. I've got to say, I love this infographic of the previous mission. We want to see some clear improvements to the version 3 Super Heavy boostback process for sure. Now speaking of these awesome infographics, I was pretty blown away by how this work comes out with Displate's metal prints. How good do these look? A huge thanks to Displate for sponsoring this video, by the way, and as many of you know, I'm a bit of a collector of these awesome metal prints. The Artemis plates, I suspect, are very popular right now, and there is a gigantic library of these ready-made options to choose from. Take these iconic shots from Apollo as another example. As you can see, they come in a number of different sizes. Of course, when my buddy Tony Bella, aka Infographic Tony, sent me one of these options to try out using the custom Displates interface, I just had to give it a go. This one is a sweet compilation of all the rockets that we love, and the other, of course, is his Artemis 2 mission infographic. Seeing these go from a digital design on the screen to a proper metal display hanging on the wall, it is honestly pretty awesome. So it's time to update my display here again. The initial installation just takes a few minutes with the magnetic mounting system. No drilling or fuss, you just clean down the wall, place on the easily removable base sticker, and then the magnet goes right on top. I absolutely love this spot here in our new music corner where I can mix in Apollo with the future of Artemis missions to come. Displate has these collections that you can browse through where recommended sets of 3 plates go so well together on the same wall. Once you've got the first set on like this, if you decide to rearrange your setup later, it is literally a few seconds to switch it out. There you go, super easy. That's what I love most about Displate. Not only do they have thousands of officially licensed designs covering everything from sci-fi, gaming, movies, and space, but you can also upload your own artwork and create something completely unique. Maybe it's your favorite launch photo, your own astrophotography, or an infographic that you've always wanted hanging in your office. So cool. If you'd like to check them out for yourself, just follow the link in the description or use the code MarcusHouse to get a massive 22% off one Displate, 27% off 2, or 33% off 3 or more. Thank you, Displate. Okay, so it's always busy around Starbase in Texas, but how about Florida? Well, the Gigabay at Roberts Road has progressed significantly too. Much further ahead, it is standing at its final height of 116 metres. The roof is now finished, so all 4 tower cranes have been disassembled, and the cranes around the base are working hard to finish that exterior cladding work. We may see those vehicles potentially set to launch with Starship Flight 15 stored right here if everything goes well with the next 2 flights. Nearby at Pad 39A's Starship launch pad, SpaceX has lifted that launch clamp test rig named ibuprofen into the launch mount on Wednesday. They use this to make sure all the launch arms and clamps can withstand the weight of a full stack and also the full thrust of a super heavy booster. That is critical now that we know those static fires are done at full thrust. The new pad design is a beast. Moving to Space Launch Complex 37A, that is already growing another level this week, which we can see thanks to Julia with NSF. That massive LR13000 crane had hold of the next tower section to be stacked. If you look close, this one is heavily decked out with the various piping and cladding already. Now, SpaceX kicked off the week with a Starlink mission with booster 1093 on its 14th flight, sending this stack of satellites from Vandenberg Space Force Base on Monday morning. Now, what caught everyone's immediate attention in this Group 1754 mission was that during the live stream they didn't show any of the usual telemetry details. No velocity readout or altitude or engine animations, just the camera view there and the mission callouts. It's not the first time that SpaceX has done this, but it always feels a little odd when you're used to having all that data available during the broadcast. We were just hoping this wouldn't become the new normal as we watched the always beautiful touchdown there on the drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. Now that was the only Starlink mission for the entire week, which almost seems a little odd these days, but there was plenty more action to come from Falcon 9. On Wednesday, in the very early hours of the morning, here was the next lifting off with AST Space Mobile's Block 2 BlueBird satellites between the fairings. A beautiful ride to main engine cutoff and stage separation. Good news as well, because all of that telemetry information was back, so I'm not sure why it was missing in the previous Starlink mission. Now on board there were 3 of these BlueBird satellites numbered 8, 9 and 10, and these Block 2 versions are designed to have up to 10 times the bandwidth capability of the first generation satellites. Waiting downrange was the drone ship A Shortfall of Gravitas, and there is landing number 29 for booster 1077. We then just needed to wait for the deployment, and there we go. These satellites are all here to increase the cellular broadband service capability, which should allow data transmission speeds of up to 120 megabits per second. They need huge communications arrays, which apparently expand out to around 223 square meters or 2,400 square feet. In fact, AST Space Mobile says that these BlueBird satellites are the largest ever to be commercially deployed into low Earth orbit, so that's pretty crazy. The last Falcon 9 mission for the week then roared off just yesterday morning on Friday. This was another secretive National Reconnaissance Office launch number 179, and it was flying away from Vandenberg Space Force Base with the young Booster 1103 flying on only its third mission. This seems to have been carrying a few more Starshield satellites for all of their intelligence needs, and as it typically goes with these missions, no views of that second stage after main engine cutoff and stage separation. An always beautiful return to launch site spectacle though, with the broadcast ending right after that glorious touchdown at Landing Zone 4. Aboard the International Space Station early in the week, the crew and ground teams prepared for the re-entry of Cargo Dragon that had arrived last month. This Dragon C209 is now tied with Crew Dragon Endeavour as the fleet leader, with both having 6 successful missions to space. It undocked on Tuesday afternoon after being docked here at the International Space Station for just over 30 days. In this case, the ISS team had loaded thousands of pounds of cargo to return home. Included in all that was loads of sweet research like the bioprinted organ and cartilage tissue samples, research aimed at improving cryogenic propellant storage for future deep space missions, and experimental DNA-inspired materials that could contribute to new cancer treatments. Also returning were several pieces of station hardware, including an eye imaging system used to monitor astronaut vision, an air filtration component, and equipment from the station's waste and hygiene system. It made its way back to Earth, splashing down off the coast of California on Wednesday morning. Now, as we head hard into the next moon activity, it shouldn't be long before we start seeing these missions fly more often. So far, it feels like it's been a fairly quiet year compared to 2025 in that regard. All the plans we've seen talked about for NASA's moon base are one thing, but seeing actual hardware is always way more exciting. The entire moon base plan has been split into 3 phases. After those are complete, NASA aims to have a continuous crew presence on the lunar surface. Let's begin with Phase 1 though, because they want to increase lunar activity by potentially flying 25 missions, which includes 21 lunar landings. Now, the first key lander, which NASA had designated Moon Base 1, was Blue Origin's Blue Moon Mark 1 Endurance Lander. Due to the recent incident at Launch Complex 36A though, we have some lengthy delays of course, so we need to be patient with that one. Then, the second key landing mission, Moon Base 2, is going to be done by Astrobotic's Griffin lander. Well, that has just completed its final integration activity and is currently on track to launch on board a Falcon Heavy late this year. This one aims to land near the moon's south pole, and it's being transported to California for environmental testing, where it's going to go through a series of pre-flight acceptance checks. They will, of course, be verifying the ability for it to withstand all those harsh launch conditions, the lengthy spaceflight, and of course the landing and lunar surface environment. Now, this mission is part of the commercial lunar payload services contracts, and it's going to carry a bunch of payloads. This includes what could be the largest commercial payload sent to the lunar surface to date, Astrolab's Flip rover. Here we are watching them test out the solar panel deployment, and what's more interesting, I think, is that this rover is going to carry 10 payloads of its own. Indeed, it's a real mission inception, this one, so I can't wait to see all the science that's going to be gathered. With Flip already going through its pre-flight tests, it's going to be integrated with the Griffin 1 lander very soon before launching at the Cape. Now, I've just got to touch on some more midweek action from Ariane Space. Lifting off here with one aggressive-looking gravity turn was their latest Ariane 6. This was certainly an exciting one to watch because it was the first flight using the new upgraded architecture. These solid boosters have received a nice upgrade going forward, but wow, so has Ariane Space's ability to broadcast some terrific onboard views. This is very welcome, let me tell you. Now, these upgraded solid rocket boosters are the new P160Cs. Compared to the previous P120C design, these are a metre longer, now holding about 156 tonnes of solid propellant. Each, they still produce around 4,780 kilonewtons, or close to 500 metric tonnes of thrust, and that's around 14 more tonnes of propellant in each compared to the previous SRBs. All this means higher performance and mass to orbit, of course, and that means that this time they were carrying 36 Amazon LEO broadband internet satellites. Yes, indeed, this was another mission for the LEO constellation, but more notable is that this was also the heaviest payload carried by an Ariane rocket to date. A little over 2.5 minutes into flight, the successful SRB jettison broadcast live with nice camera views there on the core stage. It was so nice to see all of this, and there was more to come. The core stage continued on for another 5 minutes, followed by this ripper of a shot showing the core stage separation. I have been wanting to see this clarity from Ariane space for ages, and stunning footage there as the core drifts away. Back to the mission, the Vinci engine had already begun the first of its planned 3 burns, the last of which was to help the upper stage re-enter and safely burn up in the atmosphere. Just fast forwarding through those first 2 burns though, there was the upper stage beginning to deploy those LEO satellites about 1 hour and 26 minutes after launch, adding to that growing constellation. This was just the third of 18 Ariane 6 flights booked by Amazon for these missions, so there is still a lot more action to come. Finally today, an honourable mention for the remains at Space Launch Complex 6. This week, the legacy structures at this historic site were intentionally cleared away to make room for what's to come. This site at Vandenberg Space Force Base, of course, most recently had Delta IV and Delta IV heavy launches blasting off into the atmosphere. The history around the site has been a little sad over the years before all of that, of course. Way back, over $4 billion was spent modifying this site for the space shuttle. Before any flight could take place though, the Challenger disaster grounded the fleet, and due to that and a few other reasons, this site never once saw a shuttle launch. Instead, the Air Force terminated the space shuttle program at Vandenberg at the end of 1989, so yeah, sad. Of course, in 2023, SpaceX took over this lease agreement, and they are still planning, we believe, to put in 2 landing pads for Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy. To be honest, I'm a little confused by this at the moment, because I wonder how many Falcon launches will continue to happen over the next few years as Starship begins to take the majority of mass to orbit. SpaceX have never really talked much about a Falcon retirement plan, so I'm interested to see what you think about all this. It wouldn't surprise me at all if we start to see future Starship plans at this launch complex instead. So there we go, my friends. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit subscribe so we get to keep making them. If you want to continue with more space goodness, check out this video here next. Thanks for watching all this way through as always. I'll see you all next weekend.